Okay, in this short series of videos we're going to analyze a very complex sentence, and we're going to break it up into various processes that will help you in the analysis of language. And those processes are as follows. We're going to look for the parts of speech, the word classes. Then we're going to look for the predicates. We're going to try and identify where the verbal action happens, because this usually gives us a clue as to what else is going on in the sentence. The next step is to ask questions to find where the subject and maybe also objects are within our clauses. And then finally, we're going to link the different clauses that we have identified, and we're trying to see how they are combined, what types of coordination, subordination, or what else we've got. So this is the process overall, and we're going to start off with the sentence first of all. Now, the sentence that we want to analyze is the following. When the weather is good, I like to walk in the woods that are near my home. When the weather is good, I like to walk in the woods that are near my home. It's a very complex sentence. It consists of various clauses, but we can't really tell what they are without analyzing this sentence further. So let's do our first step of analysis. Let's have a look at the parts of speech. When the weather is good. When? Well, that could be an interrogative pronoun. When are you going to be here? But in this case, it's not marking a question. Rather, it is indicating some sort of timing relationship. It's actually a type of subordinating conjunction. And we're just going to leave it at that. And we're going to go further. It's a definite article. Weather is a noun. Is a verb. And it's a particular type of verb. It's a copular verb. It indicates almost an equal sign between things. The weather is good. Okay, the weather equals good, and that's what copular verbs do. Okay, then we have good, which is an adjective. I like to walk in the woods. I, a personal pronoun, like a verb, to an infinitive marker. Now, to could also be a preposition appearing with a noun phrase, to the woods. But in this case, it's to walk. It appears with a verb, walk. So in this case, it's an infinitive marker. In is a preposition, the is another definite article, and woods is a noun. And then finally we've got that are near my home. That can be a number of different things. It can be a demonstrative pronoun. It can point at things. That woods, no, it's not that here. It's not really pointing at anything. Rather, it is indicating some sort of relationship between clauses. The other functions that can have are both subordinating. They're both subordinating clauses. So we can call that, in this case, a subordinating conjunction. Then we've got are, and are is an inflected form of the verb to be. And actually in this case, again, we have got a copular verb. Near is a preposition, near, far. And my is a possessive pronoun, and home is a noun. Great, we've done our parts of speech. We can now move on to the second part of our analysis, and that is to find the predicates. In particular, to find the verbal elements that sort of go together. We have identified a number of verbs, and actually by looking at the parts of speech that we identified, we can see that there are 4 verbal elements. Is. The weather is good. Okay, so we have this is element here. Let's highlight that. The next one, like. I like something. Okay, like is another verbal element, and that's the beginning of one predicate we've got here. Then we've got walk, not very far away from like, but it's a totally different verbal action. It's got nothing to do with like as such, but rather it's a separate verb. And then finally, we've got another copular verb in the form of are towards the end of the clause. So great, we've identified our predicates. Now we're on to the third step, and that is to find out what the subjects and maybe direct objects of these predicates are, of these verbal elements are. Right, let's ask a question. And this question is the same for all of them, and it's really easy. We just have to ask who or what is doing this thing, or who or what is experiencing this thing. Okay, let's have a look. Is, the weather is good. Who or what is good? The weather. So the answer to this question, who or what verb, gives us a subject. Who or what is good? The weather. The weather is the subject. Now this is a copular verb, so it doesn't have a direct object. It just appears with the predicate, and there can be all sorts of things in the predicate. In this case, it's an adjective, good. So we'll just move on and have a look at the other elements. I like to walk in the woods that are near my home. Okay, like. Who or what likes? Who or what likes? I. I is the subject of like. So by asking our question again, who or what, we get to the subject. And now we can try to find out the object of this verb. Who or what do I like? So we take the subject and the verb together and we ask about the object by asking who or what. Who or what do I like? Do I like the woods? No, actually it's more than that. I like to walk in the woods. Okay? It's actually the whole rest of the sentence, because we can just continue. Who or what do I like? I like to walk in the woods that are near my home. So the longest answer we can give is the entire rest of the sentence. And this is our object. It's the object of like. So we found a really unusual object by just asking the question who or what and directing it towards either the subject or the object. Let's now ask this question again and go one step further. We can now have a look at walk. We can ask who or what walks? To walk in the woods. Well, in a way it's me again, right? I'm walking again. So the subjects are what we call co-referent. The subjects are the same. And here we've got an infinitive marking that. Okay, so the subject is sort of understood. It's I in the context. Who or what do I walk? Well, I don't really walk a walk or anything. In this case, it's just walk in the woods. In the woods, a prepositional phrase that can't be a direct object because it follows a preposition, and elements following a preposition can't be a direct object. So we'll leave it there. We've just got a subject here. And then finally, we've got our copular verb to be at the end, are. Who or what are near my home? The woods. So the subject of that is the woods. Right. So now we have analysed the different subjects and the object and where the predicates are and so on. And now we can actually identify what clauses we're dealing with. Let's briefly just take a pencil and circle the clauses that we found. So when the weather is good, we can circle this one. I like to walk in the woods that are near my home. The whole thing can be circled, and we can put a little main underneath. This is the main clause, I like something. Then we can circle to walk in the woods that are near my home. This is some sort of other element that indicates something more. And then finally we've got that are near my home. This little element is a clause in its own right. So we can try to circle the different elements, at least attempt to circle them at this stage, in order to then analyse how they relate to one another. Right, we've indicated now what the subjects and the objects, in one case, of these clauses are, and that has given us a bit more of an overview as to what is going on. We can now go on to our fourth step and draw it all together. Have a look at our parts of speech, have a look at our subjects and objects, and have a look at the different functions within this big sentence that we've been analysing. So, when the weather is good, let's start with that one. In this case, we have a subordinating conjunction already at the beginning. We've got this when element appearing at the beginning. When the weather is good. It tells us a little bit about the time, right? About sort of, the situation, the timing. The sun is shining, the weather is good. Okay, when something tells us more about time, place, manner, function, purpose, in order to, or reason, because, all of those elements, they indicate an adverbial function. They give us some adverbial information within the main clause. And this is what this clause does when the weather is good. It just tells us a little bit more about the situation that we need in order for the action to happen, to walk in the woods. Or to like to walk in the woods. So in this case, that is all that this clause does. When the weather is good is an adverbial clause. I like something. I like to walk in the woods that are near my home. This is actually the main clause, consisting of a verb like and the subject I and the object that is pretty long. Now, this main clause, I like something, is actually really interesting because the something, the object, is a clause in its own right. It's actually a clause and a clause within that clause. So it's a lot of complexity there. Our object contains a predicate, so our object is a clause within the main clause, I like something. And when a subject or object within a main clause, it is a clause in its own right, we call it a complement clause. And you can check out my video on complement clauses that explains this a bit further. So here we're dealing with an object complement clause. And we found that by looking for subjects and objects earlier. Right, so at the end we have that are near my home. What does this clause do within the overall framework? Does it give us a little bit more information of an adverbial manner, like time, place, reason, function, purpose, whatever? She really doesn't really do that. And it's not the subject or object within another clause either, so it's not a complement clause either. Rather, what this clause does, that are near my home, is it gives us more information about the woods. It actually tells us something about a noun. This is a clause that gives us more information about a noun. It sort of modifies a noun, similar to an adjective, the big woods, the near woods, the woods that are near my home. So in this case, we have a subordination that is part of a noun phrase, where woods is the head noun. And we call this type of subordination a relative clause. And again, you can check out my video on relative clauses that goes into much more detail with this topic. Right, we've analyzed the entire complex sentence and we followed a simple process that went as follows. We started off with our parts of speech, our word classes. The next step was to find out where the predicates were. After that, we asked the questions who or what in order to find out where the subjects and objects of those clauses were. We then drew lines around the clauses. We try to indicate where the different clauses are in order to know what we're dealing with and how we can analyze them. And finally, we try to see which relationships the clauses had to one another, whether they were adverbial, giving more information, or whether they were relative, in giving more information about a noun within a noun phrase, or whether they were complement clauses, functioning as subject or object within a main clause. That's it.